So I'm going to see if we can get Deborah connected again. I think I see her and hear her. Wow. It's Deborah
Finally.
Friedland. Hey, hey, how are you?
Hi. I'm pretty good.
Good. I'm glad we got this to work. We had tech problems last week, and we're having tech problems now. I'm seeing a couple people joining us. So I'm going to wave at them. And Deborah, I've been talking a little bit about myself. So well, I guess I didn't ever say. I mean, I'm with Darien Wellness, and I'm the clinical director for our group, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm also an LMHC. And I've been doing this since dinosaurs roamed the earth. And Deborah, tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and about what sort of people you work with.
Hi. As David said, my name is Deborah. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with, again, I've been doing this since dinosaurs roamed the earth,
No.
um, which is a great way to put it. I work a lot with people who are suffering from anxiety and depression and other mood disorders, among other things. But I have a lot of experience with those issues, and I am available to answer any questions that I can.
You know, we've gotten some questions, and before I get to the questions, I just wanted to say or ask you a question. Do you think that the situation that we're facing with COVID, do you think there's anyone that's not affected by this new life we're all living?
Absolutely not. As people continue to say, and I'm sure everybody feels very deeply personally that we're all in this together. There's nobody who's not deeply affected by this. I mean, we've seen the numbers. There is another 6 million people who filed for unemployment insurance last week. So that makes it, you know, up in the neighborhood of 17,000 people who have lost work. So there is a very big problem in this country, as we're all well aware.
And and I think even for those that do have work, um, being at home all the time,
Yep,
in and of itself, just not being able to come and go and do what you want to do, um, really has an impact on us. Would you agree?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's hard to be stuck at home either by yourself or with the same person you've seen every day, all day, for the last month. It becomes trying.
Yeah.
It becomes trying.
Yeah.
And there's nobody can give us any assurances about when this might be over.
Yeah. I mean, we had a lady call in who she lives in pretty tight quarters with the other members of her family. And, she doesn't really have a place that she feels comfortable talking. So this is a lady who is a current client of ours. Somebody else in the group is seeing her. And just to let you all know that we do therapy over the internet, or what we call video visits, and we also do telephone visits with all of our clients. None of us are seeing people in the office right now. I don't think it's socially responsible for us to be offering in-office services at this time. Um, and this lady called and she asked, when are you going to be back in the office? And I told the person who was talking to her, plan on the 5th of July. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that we're seriously talking about an extended situation. I think that this discussion about, I just saw an article that Disneyland was considering reopening,
Is that
and
right? I
and
hadn't heard that.
yeah, and that they're going to be taking people's temperature at the gate. Um, when we now
Uh,
know that you don't necessarily you can be symptomatic or you can be asymptomatic, an
yep.
asymptomatic carrier, maybe 25% of the population will show no symptoms and be carrying the virus.
Yeah.
And the idea that they're actually proposing taking temperatures at the gate and turning people away and, letting everybody else in, I mean, it's completely unbelievable, particularly from somebody with the deeper pockets as Disney. I mean, if you've looked at the cost of Disney Plus per month, I think they're probably doing pretty well right now. And, I think our reality is we're going to be wherever we are. This is where we're going to be for a while. Um,
Yes.
the
And,
normal is not going to be here with us for a long time. What were you
right.
going to
And we
say?
all miss something a lot. We all miss something a lot. We just had a virtual Passover Seder last night.
Mm,
And while it was lovely to see everybody, although there were terrible audio problems, um, you know, my daughter's pregnant. I can't go visit her.
wow.
Um, and it's tough. Everybody's missing something quite deeply.
Yeah. My mother's in the hospital in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I can't see her. I don't know when I'm ever going to be able to see her. Just talking about the whole issue of traveling, and then when I get there, am I supposed to wait 2 weeks in a hotel room and then go see her? I mean, it's the mind kind of reels when we consider all of the pressure that we're all under just living our lives.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky because so I'm not in the office in Darien. I have a little office, and I mean a little teeny office here in Manhattan where I live, and I'm able to walk across the street. So I just walk across the street that I live on in New York City, and that's where I get to go. So I actually get the variety of having two rooms. My my home life in this place, and this is all I do. I get everything delivered. There's a Starbucks that is open between here and there, so now I get to stop at the Starbucks and say hi to them as they're standing 8 feet away. And that's what life looks like. I mean, does it feel like a movie to you?
Well, it certainly feels like science fiction.
Yeah.
And the thing that helps me and everybody I know is whatever exercise you can work into your daily routine. I am lucky enough to live in fairly open neighborhoods. I don't live in the city, so I can get to the woods easily
That's
with my
nice.
dog. And I find that any kind of exercise helps an awful lot.
I completely agree. We are built to move, and you don't have to have a weight set, and you don't have to have a jump rope. Just getting up off your butt and turning that TV off, because that endless droning news with all these statistics, it will make you, I don't want to say drive you crazy, but it'll make you more anxious than you probably already are. So
Absolutely.
good for you. And I also think pets, for those of you that have pets, we don't have a pet at my house, but I think that pets are a great resource to lean on.
Yeah.
Um, and
And as
yeah,
you point out, rationing the amount of news you consume because none of it's good.
no, no, it's not. It's
Yep.
really not. And let me actually, I'm not being a good host. I don't have my questions prepared, and my iPad is acting up, and I don't have a shop I can take it to. So I might have to remember the first question without seeing it. But yeah, because I'm having to restart my iPad for the 19th time today, probably. But so the first question actually comes from a healthcare worker, and she had COVID and has recovered, and she has just started back work again. Um,
Well,
and yeah, so because particularly here in New York, I don't know if she's in New York or she's in Connecticut. but I've seen, sometimes I can see where questions come from. But she was asking, oh, it looks like my picture went out when I waved at our new guest. Okay, well, I don't understand why my picture went out. Let me see here.
We can hear you,
There we
David. There
go.
you are.
I figured it out. All right, great. But her question, she DM'd the Darien Wellness account, and if any of you have questions, you can ask questions live while we're doing the program, or you can just send us a direct message through Instagram, and we'll be answering them the next time. We're definitely gonna do this show every Thursday at 11. And probably going to have an evening one as well. I've just got to figure out a schedule and figure out a co-host for that one, because I'm not brave enough to do this by myself. But her question was, well, actually, you know what? My iPad was restarted, and I wanted to get her phrasing exactly. Here you go. Is it bad of me that I feel anxious or angry when I hear my coworkers talking about how they might have COVID because they say a symptom, like they're like, I'm sore, I might have COVID, or I'm tired, I wonder if I have COVID, so I guess to some of her question, is it unusual that she's more sensitive, having survived COVID and come back to work, that she's hearing all these people attributing every problem they have to the thing that she actually had? So,
I would say that's a normal response.
yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of anxiety. Probably when she found out she actually had it, there was an enormous amount of fear about what was going to happen to her, because there's so much conversation about people dying, and that it's totally understandable that she would feel somewhat resentful of folks who casually mention it like that. On the other hand, it's important to realize that everybody's scared.
that's a good point.
And, even if it sounds trivial, um, people are worried about whether or not they also might be catching this thing, especially if they're working in the healthcare system where they're obviously very vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me a little bit of one of the areas that are client groups that I like to work with is people living with bipolar diagnosis. And I've had this conversation with people who have a bipolar diagnosis when they have friends or they have coworkers say, God, I'm so bipolar, when they're describing their personality. And we've had this exact same conversation that, I mean, sure, you're going to be sensitive because you actually have it. It's a
Yes.
reality for you. It's not an expression.
Yeah.
Um, I've got this one isn't as much of a question as a comment. I love my family, but I wish I could get a break. And then there's a sad face. Um, uh, uh,
I mean, honestly, don't we all feel that way?
I was just talking to one of my clients yesterday. When he was a kid, he loved ketchup. He doesn't really like ketchup anymore as we kind of grow out of things. But he was a kid and he loved ketchup. And one day he decided that since he loved ketchup, he just wanted to eat ketchup all by itself.
Yum.
And that sort of burned him out on ketchup. And, I think too much of anything is bad, is the moral of this comment and that story, right? That
On the
just,
other hand,
mhm,
sometimes when you're forced to cope with the same people over and over again, you find different ways of communicating and being patient and coping with annoyances in your relationship where you could avoid before by just going out or, going to have coffee with a friend. You're forced to deal with it now. And while that can be annoying, it can also be an opportunity for real growth
Hmm.
and some profound change in relationship.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the reasons that I like having somebody else on is we're all in our own echo chamber, so I like hearing other perspectives. It reminds me of my mentor or one of my mentors in becoming a therapist. Um, she said that hard times verify things for us. And what she meant by that is if we have a good relationship, we understand that it's really solid. And if we don't have a good relationship, we really can see that for everything that it is.
Yes.
And I am hearing that there's a lot of problems with people at home who are forced to live together and maybe don't have the greatest relationships in the world.
Yes.
I mean, going back to this comment, do you have any suggestions for people who, or maybe, who do have great family relationships? It's definitely not a comment on your relationship that you're kind of, well, like this lady who wrote in. What was her comment again? I
Says, I
liked it.
love my family, but can I get a break?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, and just this little sad face here.
Yeah.
I would show a picture of the comment, but it would reveal who she is, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I just like that. Yeah, I mean, um, how would you suggest that somebody create some space for themselves in that
Well,
situation?
I think that depends on how big your house is.
Uh-huh.
If you have a room where you can go and be on your own and do a little meditation or take I don't know, a streaming yoga class or something that would give you a moment on your own, or go out and take a walk by yourself, or do this, or FaceTime with friends. Even though you can't be with them, it's an interaction that takes you out of your immediate environment in a way that can be really helpful.
It's really interesting. You mentioned that because last night I was trying to go to bed, but I forgot to turn my phone off. And it's a friend of mine who's actually in the Midwest, and uh, all of us are therapists. We all used to be in this group, but we have dispersed. So there's four of us in four different time zones. And Saturday we're going to get together and have coffee.
Great.
Yeah, we just got to figure, because the person on the West Coast usually gets the raw end of the deal,
Yes.
but
The
because
5 a.m. call.
yeah, I mean, I can have coffee at 1, and I'm bad at numbers, so that means 12, 11, 10. So maybe we could do an afternoon coffee for me, and we could do a 10 a.m. for our friend on the West Coast. But,
Yeah.
the four of us, wow, we haven't been in the same room in probably 3 years. So this would be, I find, do you think that in some ways people are connecting more?
That's what I keep hearing. I keep hearing people have heard from friends and former colleagues that they haven't heard from or about in years. And people are reaching out to each other um, at now, because this is scary for everybody. And I've heard lots of people renew connections to folks that have faded out of their lives over the years. It's an opportunity. There's
Mhm.
always, ways to make uh, lemonade out of lemons, if you will. There there are ways to derive benefit out of this. Yeah, you have to look for them, but there are ways, and
Yeah,
that's one of them.
yeah, yeah. And I think this pushes our creativity a little bit. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. for all of us. Yeah, So I've got let me see, I've got another question here. Um, okay. Um, this is about how can I tell if my teenager, and I don't, teenager is, folks, if you write in questions, the more information, the better. Um, because a teenager could be 13, obviously, or also could be 17. So kind of
Or
develop,
19.
or
Yeah.
well, or 19. Yeah, that shows you how awesome I am with numbers, right? That I hadn't even considered 19. Um, but yeah, the more information, the better. But her question is, how can I tell if my teenager is depressed?
Mm.
And that one's a little challenging, but especially without more supporting information. But what would do you have a suggestion before I dive in with my thought about that one?
Well, it's hard to know because usually one of the signs of depression, especially in a teenager, is isolation. Um, I mean, all teenagers are isolated right now, and probably in their rooms, on their computers, or on their phones, or something, which in normal times would be more of a red flag than it is now. Um, uh, I would, if they stop fighting with you, if they stop talking, I'd worry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that I would say just kind of build on that because I don't know the teenager and I don't know any specifics. Um, I would just look, I would say, what was the behavior normally? And have you seen a real change in the behavior now? So, you know, because behavior changes for a reason. Behavior doesn't just drop out of the sky. So, if you have, I mean, there's a lot of people who are adolescent professionals who really don't think that teenagers can be diagnosed as depressed because a lot of the symptoms of depression, um, you know, sleeping a really odd schedule,
Yes.
overeating or undereating, social isolation. Um, that's kind of the symptoms of being a teenager for a lot of kids. So it's hard to discern. And I think I do work with adolescents, and what I'm looking for is a change in behavior.
Yeah.
So if you have somebody who has been very social and very connected to friends and very motivated about schoolwork, and all of a sudden they're sullen and they're withdrawn and they don't care about school, something's causing that change. That's so I think in general, and I mean, I don't think that applies to just teenagers. I think that
To
applies to
everyone.
anybody. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's really not magic. I've just given all of you assessment 101.
There you go.
Is we're just looking for a behavior change. And the other question that I get a lot is whether that way sometimes. Um, it needs to be a sustained change. Like you can really see over weeks. And actually, I mean, the general rule of thumb is 60 days. I mean, we haven't been doing this for 60 days. I fear we
Right.
might be doing it for more than 60 days. But if you're seeing a sustained change, a constant change, so if they were very talkative and all of a sudden they're not talkative at all, um, you know, I'd reach out, say, is something going on? And then they're going to tell you no because they're teenagers. And then just check in with them every now and then.
Yeah.
And it's good for them to know that you're mindful of the fact that something's happening and that you're there for them.
Right.
And I mean, once again, I think that,
Right. And it doesn't hurt to let them know that you understand. they're adjusting to something that's very abnormal. And share your own process a little bit,
Well, I think that's
because
great.
that tends to help normalize things a little bit. This
Yeah.
this isn't going to last forever. It's going to
Hmm.
last longer than we want it to, and we all have to figure out how to put our feet on the ground while it's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to expand on, you used kind of a little bit of a psychobabbly phrase that I want to kind
Uh
of
oh.
explore, but which is you just like share a little bit of your own process. I mean, when you say that, do you mean like give an example of how it's affecting you and how you're coping with it? Is that just to
Yes,
clarify?
exactly. And the things that you're missing, because obviously, a teenager is missing his friends. That's, a teenager is all
Yeah.
about his social or her social group. So he or she is missing their friends, missing going out together, missing all of that. And you're missing things too. So if you can really connect on a level
A
that
human
makes
level.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And
I
and
miss my
and
friends too.
yeah, yeah, right. Seeing your beautiful face 24 hours a day kind of drives me a little bananas too, there, buddy. And making it a maybe being funny about it. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a dire conversation.
Yeah.
It can be, look, we're all kind of driving each other a little bonkers.
Yep.
And then, but not just to acknowledge that that's true, but also how you cope with it.
Yes.
That's really important. And I wasn't giving you a hard time about that psychobabbly thing. It's just I try to always be aware when I'm talking to people who aren't in the business about we use a lot of shop phrases, I think, and
That's true.
and it's sufficient shorthand when we're talking to each other, but when we're talking to regular folks who don't do this for a living, I'm always kind of like going, is that clear? Is that clear in my own head? So forgive me
Good.
for
Good call.
hopping in there and editing you on that. But well, I'm looking at the big clock on the wall. Actually, I'm looking at the little clock on my phone, and it's saying that it's been 30 minutes, which is really kind of amazing.
That is amazing.
And yeah, so we've had a good many people stop in and actually stay. I see some of you
Yep.
who've stayed for the whole show, so that's pretty good.
And let's remind everybody we're going to do this again next week at 11.
Yep.
And
Thursdays at 11.
if you have questions or something you want comment on,
Mhm.
don't forget to send it in so that we can prepare if necessary,
Mhm.
or know what's of interest to you, because the whole point of doing this is to be helpful and useful.
No, in any way we can. So
Yep.
I could not have said it better, so I won't say anything else other than we're going to go. I think that I'm going to save this show and post it on our feed so people will be able to watch it later. And
Great.
so we'll be on in our archive for people to see. And like Deborah said, email us, DM us, give me questions, and we'll answer them next Thursday at 11.
Or at
So
least do our best.
do our best. Great point again. So all right. I hope everybody stays safe.
All
And
right.
Deborah, thanks a lot, and I'll see
Stay
you
well.
soon. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
all. Bye bye.